The Oregon State Police received a call of what they called a walk-away from Fairview Training Center. It was a mental health facility. When the state police responded, they learned that it was Janie Landers, an 18-year-old female with developmental disabilities that had walked away from the facility.
Janie was 18 years old, but she didn't look 18. Janie was about 5'1", I think somewhere around 90 pounds, dripping wet, and the developmental age of about an 8-year-old.
Staff members tell police that 18-year-old Janie has been missing for several hours.
Detectives start gathering information. They interviewed her teacher first, and they found out that Janie was last seen in her classroom, and that Bill Graff, her counselor, he had come in and spoken with her while she was in class for a short while. And a short time later, she stormed out of the classroom. And the teacher said that she saw Janie walking from the classroom towards Kozer Cottage, which was the housing unit where she lived. But Janie didn't arrive at Kozer Cottage where she was supposed to, and then they listed her as AWOL.
The staff was all talking about it up until end of shift. And we hadn't heard any word other than, nope, they haven't found her yet.
Janie was last seen right before 2:00 p.m.
I worked at Fairview for approximately 3.5 years. I was a psychiatric aide. The day that Janie disappeared, it was just as normal as could be. When I turned a corner close to the main driveway that I went up every day, I saw this girl, and I recognized her as a resident. I did not know her name, but I had seen her on campus. I see a car that's parked on the shoulder and a gentleman walking in front of my car. I thought, I don't recognize him. This is kind of fishy. Why would that man be out of his car? What is he even doing getting close to her? And I thought, should I pick her up or should I not? I wanted to, but there were strict rules against it. So I quickly went up to my cottage and called security. Security went down and checked. They didn't find anyone.
Witness information came into play, and they started figuring out that that was most likely Janie. Detectives get a description of the individual that Janie was talking to.
He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. He was maybe 35, 40. He had a big pot belly, about 5'8" or 5'10". He needed a haircut. It was kind of shaggy.
She also gave her information about the vehicle.
It was a gold color sedan, 4-door.
Now we have more of a possibility of an abduction. Like, she didn't just walk away, she was talking to somebody. Fairview had hundreds of employees, and there was no restricted access to the facility, so it could have literally been anyone. A landowner was checking his field and the perimeter of his property and discovered the body of a young female discarded at the edge of a farm field right off the highway.
Authorities knew they had one missing person. They knew that this was probably Janie.
When she's first discovered, she's lying face down in the bushes, and as they roll her, she's got an arm kind of up by her face. There was a lot of blood coming from some stab wounds on her neck area.
The victim is 18-year-old Janie Landers.
There wasn't a lot of evidence. There was blood there. There was no signs of a struggle. It was pretty clear that the body was just dumped in the bushes.
She had been stabbed somewhere else, and she had fought for her life.
Detectives canvassed the area and talked to the homeowners in the immediate vicinity, but they didn't find anything.
When my dad got the call about Janie, he had distress in his voice. And then he tells us, Janie's body was found. It looked like she had been murdered. I didn't want to believe that they found her dumped somewhere.
In the autopsy, one of the things that was determined was that her stomach contents were consistent with what was served at the noon meal at Fairview on March 9th. That information would suggest that she was killed shortly after she was last seen. In 1979, when we want to broadcast information to the public, we were going through the newspaper primarily. The Statesman Journal was where we would generate leads and tips from.
Leona was descriptive enough that it gave detectives confidence to try to call in a sketch artist.
There was newspaper articles about Janie being missing, and the sketch of the suspect was put in the paper. Two women that worked at the food cart on Fairview saw the article in the paper and the sketch of the man last seen talking to Janie, recognized him as a man that they had served at the food cart the day she went missing on March 9th. We don't know who he was, but we know that he at least came and he had lunch there. We didn't have a lot of other information to go on.
Joyce hangs her last hope of solving Janie's murder on the promise of new technology.
I talked to Detective Hinkle and a couple other officers. I knew just from my own studies and watching TV that the technology was better in 2015 than it was in 1979. They had the ability to test her clothing to see if anything was there, was there ability to match DNA.
I ended up collecting 4 isolated bloodstains from Janie Lander's shirt to send to DNA that I thought might be transfers from the perpetrator. If the perpetrator had picked her up and had, say, a cut on his finger or hand, and he had grabbed her and maybe put her over his shoulder, that would be a location where his hand would naturally go to her back.
9 months after Janie's shirt is submitted for testing, the results come back.
I got a call from Jen telling me that there was a CODIS hit, and the suspect was Gerald Dunlap. So I wanted to know, who the hell is Gerald Dunlap? His DNA profile was in CODIS because he was sentenced and was in Oregon State Prison at some point.
Gerald Dunlap is a convicted sex offender, first arrested in the 1960s.
Gerald Dunlap was sent to prison for 99 years for the rape of a very young female victim in 1961 in the state of Tennessee. He was paroled, however, in 1973. He was only there for 12 years.
I was able to track down a photograph taken of Gerald Dunlap in Tennessee when he was paroled, and that photograph matched the forensic sketch very closely. So that confirmed that we were on the right track.
After he's released from a Tennessee prison, Dunlap is hired to work at Fairview Training Facility.
Dunlap worked in laundry. Payroll records from Fairview show that he was employed and working during the month of March in 1979. When we interviewed the co-workers and supervisors in laundry, they all said that they worked a day shift and every single person had a break at 2 p.m. That's the point where Janie went missing. One of the supervisors I interviewed in laundry said that he ended up having to fire Gerald because he had patted a female patient that worked in laundry on the butt. So that was another red flag, in addition to his prior rape offense from the 60s, and then the sexual assault case in the early 90s, where he sexually assaulted his step-granddaughter. That case ended him up in Oregon State Prison.
What we were dealing with was a serial rapist, somebody who preyed upon young women.
The justice system failed. By letting him out, the justice system gave him a free card to go and harm another person and eventually murder my sister.
When we got the photograph of him, we did a double-blind photo lineup with the witnesses that were still alive. And they both picked Dunlap's photo out of that lineup.
When Detective Hinkle came to my home, he said, I have some pictures here that I'd like you to go through and see if you can identify anyone. I looked through them. This is the man that I saw there. And he says, yeah, we got him.
Janie's family finally knows who the killer is, but justice comes too late. Dunlap died in prison in 2002.
One moment I'm feeling elated, yes, we have a match of DNA, but yet he's deceased. So right away I'm thinking, we don't even get to take him to court and find him guilty of what he did to Janie.
I was disappointed that Gerald Dunlap was dead. I want 12 jurors to come in and I want them to say that Gerald Dunlap is guilty of this crime.